Hello everybody, today I can evaluate trig functions using QSFR and using my special values table. So first off, there are quite a few prerequisites for this lesson. This builds upon I'm just going to type them out. This builds upon the special right triangles. This builds upon the signs of quadrants. So, signs of quadrants is definitely a huge one. The special right triangles, it's not the end of the world if you don't have that. We're going to kind of just build off of that. But you definitely need the signs of quadrants lesson in order to do this one. So, this little table of values, I'm going to derive it for you. I'm going to show you where it comes from. But at the end of the day, you just need to have this thing memorized. It's as simple as that. I'm going to also show you how you can go about memorizing it, some little tips and tricks for that. So we are going to start with our special right triangles that we did in the previous lesson. We have our 30, 60, 90, and we have our 45, 45, 90. And the proportions in the 30, 60, 90 was 1, 2, radical 3, and 1, 1, radical 2. I think I might have put x's in front of each of them, but it's the same proportions. We're going to go back to geometry right now. We're going to pull out SOHCAHTOA to come up with these different trig ratios. So let's start with 30. This angle right here is 30, so I'm going to find sine of 30, cosine of 30, and tangent of 30. Well, sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, tangent is opposite over adjacent. So I label my H, my A, and my O. My H is my hypotenuse, my long slanted side. The angle connects the H to the A, my adjacent side, which makes that my O. So O over H is 1 over 2. A over H is radical 3 over 2. And O over A is 1 over radical 3. Now, I don't want a radical in my denominator, so to get rid of it, I can do what I call rationalizing, which you may or may not have seen. So if I multiply the top and bottom by radical 3, I end up with rad 3 over 3. So those are my special angles, my special values for your 30-degree angles. Next, I'm going to just erase these greens. And let's do a different color. Let's go purple, my favorite. And let's do 60. Sine is 60, cosine is 60, tan is 60. Now I'm working with this angle, so H stays H, but now this becomes my A, and this becomes my O. Sine again is O over H, cosine is A over H, tangent is O over A. So O over H would be radical 3 over 2. A over H would be 1 over 2. O over A would be rad 3 over 1, which is just rad 3. So those are my special values for 60 degrees. And now let's move to the other triangle. And let's do sine of 45, cosine of 45, tangent of 45. And again, sine is over H, cosine is A over H, tangent is O over A. So it doesn't matter which 45 we pick. I'll pick this one. That's my H, that's my A, that's my O. So O over H is 1 over rad 2. Remember, we don't want a radical in the denominator. So if I multiply top and bottom by rad 2, I get rad 2 over 2. A over H is also 1 over rad 2, which is, if I multiply, same thing I just did on top. Again, I end up with rad 2 over 2. O over A is 1 over 1, which is just 1. So what I just did is I derived these 9, 3, 3, 3 special values, and you're going to be responsible for knowing sine, cosine, and tangent of 30, 45, and 60. And we place them into this table here. So I'm going to show you the easiest way to build this table. Keep in mind, if your class happens to be open notes, then you just use this. I'm recording this right now during the pandemic year. Who knows how many years later this video might be servicing and helping children. So here's how you create the table, build the table. And listen, also, if you're using this in the future, this is a lesson you're probably going to see in a future class, potentially in a college class. So that's kind of why we're going through it now as well. So 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, 3, 1, 3 are my numerators. 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, 3, 1, 3. My first 2 rows, 2 is on the bottom for all of them. My third row, only the first one has a denominator, and it's 3. All of my numerators have radicals. Now, you'll notice the 1 doesn't have a radical, but technically it does. Radical 1 is just 1. So I don't have to write the radical on the 1, but I'm going to write the radical on the rest of them. That is how you build your table. I'm going to do that one more time. Let's go orange. Sine, cosine, tan, 30, 45, 60. 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, 3, 1, 3. First 2 rows are all over 2. Bottom row, only the first one is over 3. All my numerators are radicals. I don't have to put it on the 1 because radical 1 is just 1. So if you're dealing with this lesson and other lessons to come, this comes up a lot in Trig, and you can't use your notes, build this table, write it onto your paper, that way you have it. So you might want to maybe pause it and take a moment and just try and create this table on your own. But keep in mind, just make sure you have it written down or a picture of it, because we're going to be using this table all throughout. So let me just kind of get this thing going. And I'm sorry, one other prerequisite lesson. We also need to know how to do referencing. So that's going to come up in this lesson as well. All right, so let me just, perfect. It's asking for sine of 30. So this one's pretty basic. We're not going to get into the whole QSFR procedure yet. Let's just start by using the table. If it wants sine of 30, well, sine of 30 is 1/2. And that's it. It wants cosine of 45, so go to your table, match it up. Cosine of 45 is rad 2 over 2. Tangent of 60, go to your table, find tangent of 60. Your answer is radical 3. So if it's in the first quadrant, if it's in the table, that's it. Now, it gets a little bit more complicated when it's not. So we are going to use our QSFR procedure. Q stands for quadrant. S stands for sign, as in positive or negative. F is for function. That's sine, cosine, or tangent. And R stands for reference angle. So, let's get this copied. And let's start by sketching it. 0, 90, 180, 270, 360. 150 would be here between 90 and 180. And then we need to find the, let's just kind of start writing down our QSFR at this point. So we're in quadrant 2. What's the sign in quadrant 2? So this goes back to all students take calculus. In quadrant 2, sine is positive, which means cosine is going to be negative. The trig function is cosine, and the reference angle, well, the reference angle is the angle that's made between the angle and the x-axis. So in this case, it's 180 minus 150, which is 30. So now we're kind of putting this together. Negative cosine 30. We look at our chart. Cosine of 30 is radical 3 over 2. Because it's negative, that's my answer. So a few steps. What did I do? I sketched the angle, 150. I then listed my QSFR. Q is the quadrant it's in. And in quadrant 2, cosine is negative. My trig function was cosine, so I just listed that. And my reference angle is the angle that's made with the angle in the x-axis. In this case, it's 30. So I put those things together, and I just wrote it as negative cosine 30. I go to my table. Cosine of 30 is rad 3 over 2. So because it's negative cosine 30, it's negative rad 3 over 2. That was just the first example. Let's go through another one, and the more you see, the more they'll make sense. Sine of 120. So I'm going to draw a little sketch. 120 is going to fall in quadrant 2. All students take calculus. My reference angle is 180 minus 20, which is 60. So QSFR, quadrant 2. In quadrant 2, sine is positive. The trig function is sine. The reference angle is 60. So I have positive sine of 60. Sine of 60 is radical 3 over 2. My answer is radical 3 over 2. Let's try another one. All right, I'm going to do a little sketch. 0, 90, 180, 270, 360, 135 is in quadrant 2. All students take calculus. Reference angle is the angle that's made with the x-axis. 180 minus 135 is 45. QSFR. Quadrant 2. In quadrant 2, tangent is negative because in quadrant 2 only sine is positive. The trig function again is tan. The reference angle is 45. So it's negative tan of 45. Tan of 45 is 1. So your answer is negative 1. We're going to try one more together. I think I'm frozen. Okay. I'm thinking we're going to do maybe one more together, and then I'm going to let you practice on your own. Am I still frozen? I don't know how I'm still frozen. All right. Tangent of 210. So, let me just grab this again. So, I'm going to let you kind of start this on your own. I want you to sketch the angle on the grid, find the reference angle. So I'll give you about 15 seconds to do that. Sketch the angle on the grid, find the reference angle. Q10 is in quadrant 3. The reference angle is 210 minus 180, which is 30. Write in your all students take calculus. And now Q, S, F, R. I want you to try and fill in your QSFR. I'll just give you about 15 to 20 seconds and see if you can fill those values in. Okay, in quadrant 3, the sign of tangent is positive because that t means that tangent is positive. The function again is tan, and the reference angle is 30. So I have positive tan 30. Now I just go to my table, I match it up, and I'm done. So why don't you finish it up? I'll give you about 5 seconds. Tan of 30 is rad 3 over. I want you to try number 8 on your own from start to finish. So please pause, try number 8 on your own, and then unpause. Okay. If I sketch it, 0, 90, 180, 270, 360, 225, 45. all students take calculus. QSFR. In quadrant 3, sine is negative. We have sine. And the reference angle is 45. So it's negative sine 45. So it's negative rad 2 over 2. That's your answer. So, there's just one more example I want to do with you, and then after that, you will have time to practice. First off, secant of 30. Well, I know that secant is 1 over, I guess there's another prerequisite that we need for this lesson, is the reciprocal trig functions, is 1 over cosine. So, or instead of thinking of it that way, secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So if cosine of 30 is rad 3 over 2, then the reciprocal of that, secant of 30, is 2 over rad 3. Now, you can rationalize that. You can leave it as is. I'm fine with you leaving it as is. That would be your answer. So if it's asking you for one of the reciprocal functions, find its reciprocal, and then flip it. So, let's do 22, cosecant of 135. So I'm going to first find the sine of 135. So I'm going to draw my little grid, 0, 90, 180, 270, 360, 135. The reference angle is 45. All students take calculus. QSFR. In quadrant 2, sine is positive. Again, the function is sine, and the reference angle is 45. So it's positive sine 45, which is positive rad 2 over 2. This is sine of 135. Because it wants cosecant of 135, it's the reciprocal of that, which is just 2 over rad 2. So again, if it's asking for the reciprocal, then you find the sine, cosine, or tangent first, and then once you get that answer, you just flip it. So this one is your answer. And that's it. So your classwork/homework is to practice this. Again, this lesson puts a lot of things together. I also should have put in here that we need the reciprocal trig functions. Reciprocal trig functions. So it incorporates a lot of different things. But this is something that you're going to see probably if you take a math course in the future, in college, later in high school. This is stuff that's going to come up again. So make sure that you get a good grasp on it now. Again, your classwork/homework is to finish this, and I can evaluate trig functions using QSFR and using my special values table, which we built using my special right triangles. Have a great day.